Welcome to the Hard Won Wisdom Podcast with best-selling author Fawn Germer and corporate innovator Michelle Brigman. Come here weekly for career and life-changing conversations with some of today's most influential thought leaders, senior executives, and trailblazers who will share their mentoring wisdom. This podcast is brought to you by the Women's Leadership Network.
Hi, I'm Fawn Germer.
And I'm Michelle Brigman.
And this is the Hard Won Wisdom Podcast. Today is a day I've been looking forward to because we have Mary Hayes Greico, who is an author of a topic that I want to perfect, but I need help in that department. We all do. Her book is called Unconditional Forgiveness. And before she got on here, Michelle and I were talking about her behind her back because it's a really good book.
Really good.
It's really good. And it's something that during this time with you on the podcast, we hope that you can also find a way to get toward healing and the issues that keep nagging at you when people let you down. So, Mary, welcome to the podcast.
I'm so glad to be here.
And tell a little about the story of how this came about and what it's done for you.
Oh, all right. Well, I was a young and earnest woman in my early 30s and looking for my life purpose, essentially. And I knew that it had probably had something to do with psychology, probably had something to do with healing, didn't know. But I was kind of in the business of discovering, what am I here for? And in the course of that time, I was led to meet my mentor, Dr. Edith Stauffer, who just instantly inspired me just in who she is, just in watching this little old white-haired lady walk around the room. I thought, I want to follow you around like a puppy and learn from you, learn what you know. And I had a lot of issues in those days. I had grown up in an alcoholic family. I had some bumps and bruises and traumas along the way. So I was a little bit bashed up psychologically, and I knew it, and I really wanted to heal myself and become my best soulful, useful, purposeful self. So I found myself willing to learn just about anything this wise old woman was going to teach, and it turns out she was teaching forgiveness. And even though I hated the thought of forgiveness because I like to hold grudges, I attended her training, and it felt this amazing physical release and lightening up happen inside me because I did a piece of forgiveness work, and I thought, oh, this is my path. This is my way. And I just took to her work like a duck to water, and I studied hard, and I practiced a lot of forgiveness sessions on my own, and I began clearing up my sorry story. And every single time I did it, I felt like I had lost 15 pounds. I felt like I wanted to walk with a skip in my step and that things were hopeful and good. It was amazing. It was just amazing. So I asked her to train me in teaching this work, and we ended up being really an important mentor-student dyad for a good 10, 15 years. And then she passed this body of work to me, and I have refined it and improvised and improved, and I have trained other people in how it's done. So it just became my life work, and I am still really happy about it. It's still a very fresh thing for me because every time I help somebody do forgiveness, it is the home of the miracle. I watch their posture change. I watch their skin tone brighten. I watch them look up and see the horizon and start laughing and thinking about what they want to do next instead of suffering about this story. So I just love it, and I'm glad I got led into this work.
I think it's important that we use as much of this time so you can actually give the listeners this intensive session on how to go about doing it. And I know how important it is. There's that quote, forgiveness is a gift you give to yourself. And I think about 10 people have claimed credit for saying it, but I know that I know forgiveness is important, but sometimes I've been let down by people, and I want so desperately to instantly forgive because I know I'll get that skip in my step but it's been a long, arduous process. So what's the fastest, most effective way we can go about doing it? And tell us a little about the 8 steps to freedom.
Well, that is the fastest way we can go about healing. The 8 steps to freedom are a really reliable approach to healing a bad emotional story and completing it and putting it to rest. And the reason they always work, really, it's amazing, they always work, is that my teacher was a psychologist for 45 years and a student of spiritual matters, and she really studied and observed what it takes for our psyche to let go of something. So I'm glad that you're so willing to go there, Fawn, and say, yeah, I want to do this thing. But I would say that the hardest step of all, and the one that takes the longest, is the one that gets us to step 1, which is being willing. And we just have a lot of resistance. Everyone has a lot of resistance to forgiveness for various reasons. And so that is the longest part, is getting yourself to being really willing to go there and do it. And then moving into step 2, where we take some time to very directly feel our pain, our disappointment, our sorrow, our anger, whatever it is, and to release it. So this work is, it's boiled down into a method, a couple of methods, and they're very reliable. But stories are short or long. They're little or big. And so your biggest stories, you are not going to go, galloping through it in 45 minutes. A smaller story, you will. You'll gallop right through it in 45 minutes. A smaller daily life insult, you'll gallop right through it in 15 minutes. But the big losses, the big betrayals, the childhood traumas, those things, they deserve a little bit of time. And so we need to enter into it very deliberately and give ourselves the time. But it doesn't take forever. It does not take forever. It when you're ready, it doesn't take long at all.
Mary, one of the things that really stood out to me, first, whenever I was reading the book and listening to some of your talks, was you had a different definition of forgiveness. And that right there set a completely different tone for me. I would love for you to share your definition of forgiveness.
Thank you. Yes, because I've never heard anyone argue with it. And it works beautifully to all these different audience situations that I've been in. It works in religious church situations. It works in treatment centers. It works in businesses. It just works because it's a universal understanding of forgiveness, not a religious one. So in this model, we say that forgiveness is the refreshing, healing experience that happens when we release an expectation that is causing us to suffer. So I'll just say that again.
Say that again, because
it
has to sink in.
Well, that nails it.
I was like, whoa, wait
think
a second.
about it. Yes. Forgiveness is the refreshing, healing experience that happens when we release an expectation that causes us to suffer. So the expectation I have that, say, a person would have been honest with me. Now, that's a reasonable and good expectation to have. It's based on who I am. It's based on my values. It's based on what we think is right. But they weren't. They were not honest with me. They lied. They lied 2 years ago, and I'm still thinking about it. Right? So we don't want to walk around thinking about things that happened 2 years ago or even 2 weeks ago. We want to, as much as possible, move along through life in a resilient way and let go of things and let go of unrealistic expectations of some people and situations. And so for me to release an expectation that this person would have been honest with me is now going to help me get to neutral. And I'm not thinking about it anymore. It's not in my brain. Now, I might have learned something from the situation. And next time I'm with that person, I might remember, they're actually not 100% trustworthy. Actually, this person lied to me before, so let's just take this with a grain of salt. We need to learn as we go along. But the idea of forgiving everyone, everything, all the time is so that we can have a flow of goodwill and unconditional love in our hearts, that we can love everybody, even if they're stupid, even if they're jerks, but we won't hang out with them, right? We won't let them take advantage of us. We'll say no, but we'll say no with a sense of blessing for them too, because we don't know why people are strange. We don't know why people do wrong things, but we don't want to be spending our life force and our energy thinking about other people's problems.
Well, and I think the thing that stood out to me as well is you don't talk about, you forget about it. You said, I learned something, there's a lesson. So now I use that going
Don't
forward.
forgive and forget. Don't forgive and forget. Forgive and remember. Forgive and grow smarter. Forgive and say no. Forgive and incorporate this story into your life story as a part of the fabric, but no longer something that stands out and hurts you over and over again.
Well, boy, it's that idea of it over and over again, because that is what these kinds of pains do. It's just this, it causes you to ruminate, and then you wound yourself again. And I know somebody who had a divorce 20 years ago and is still hurt, angry, bitter. And my thing is, this guy stopped thinking about you 20 years ago.
And it's possible that you are hurting yourself with that resentment. There's a lot of studies these days that are showing clearly what our wise old grandmas knew, which is that resentments are bad for you and forgiveness is good for your health. And that if you hold on to resentments and foster them and let them ruminate around and around in your body for years, you might be creating tumors. You might be creating stress-related illnesses. There's a lot of evidence growing that that's true.
And I like that notion of expectations. And I don't want to pull you too far off the 8 steps. We promise you listeners, you're going to get all 8, because we'd hate to stop you in the middle and you'd be stuck in some sort of a vortex. But is that when you are going through this and doing it, it's like you have these expectations that other people have the same values and behaviors that you would exhibit. And that
Right.
when they don't, it's personal, because I would never do that to you. Why would you
We're
do that to me?
insulted, we're shocked, we're disgusted, we're dismayed. We think, what's the matter with you? Everybody knows this, but we don't. We don't know how people were raised differently than us. We don't know what kind of traumas and journeys they've been through that have given them kind of a, some kind of a torque in their mind that we don't understand. So we really, I remember one time my teacher saying it so beautifully. We were in traffic and I was really getting mad at a driver that was being very, very rude in front of me. And I was just like steaming and muttering and like, oh, do you see that? And she was so placid. She was so calm and peaceful. And she said to me, we don't know why they did that, dear. And I'm like, what do you mean? Everyone knows you can't run a red light. You can't. We don't know if there was someone hemorrhaging in the back seat. We don't know if there was a woman in labor. We don't know why they did that, dear. In fact, dear, we don't know anything at all. So I thought that was hilarious that you could actually realize that there's a whole lot I don't know about people in life and situations. But what I do know is that some of them are not mine to carry as burdens. They're just something that happened that I need to digest in a way and move right along and be all about what makes me happy and be all about what I'm here for. And, I think you've discovered already there's so much to talk about with this. We could go down all these different pathways, but I want to just insert here that that people can review the 8 steps very easily if they want to on my website, forgivenesstraining.com, and lots of free information there. So anyway, but shall we march through the 8 steps? Would that be good?
I just, by this point, I already want you to be my best friend, because I can't. So much
Wait a second. I might need to forgive you for that. I might be angry with you for that, Fawn.
No, I think you guys should just organize a women's forgiveness weekend, and I should come there, and we should rock it, and then we can be best friends.
Yeah. Well, in fact, I'm gonna ask a question, because you got to step 2, and I will tell you, when I was reading the book, so I'm gonna repeat step 2 for a second. So step 2 was express your feelings exactly as they are inside you. Okay, when I read that, I'm going to be honest with you, I slammed this book because I went, this has been, I'm in the learning phase of this, because my whole life, wasn't really allowed to express my feelings. I was like, I'm learning how to do this. And I think there's probably a lot of people out there, because we're talking about forgiveness for others. But the other thing that became very clear with your book was forgiveness of self.
Mhm.
Forgiveness of self, what you
Mhm.
can or can't do. And so I wanted to just loop back in that this is these are great tactics for that. But it was just funny to me how difficult putting the expressions around how I was feeling was for me. And
Well,
I'm sure there are other
I
people.
love your honesty about that, Michelle. And it's, in a way, it's a gift that this is a private process, that you have got an empty chair in front of you. Maybe you have a picture or an object in the chair that reminds you of the person you're forgiving, but you're alone in a room with your empty chair and your Kleenex, and you can take your time and you begin speaking out loud, and we use the language of emotion. We say things like, I think I'm mad. I think I'm mad at you. I was very disappointed about this. And I remember wishing that I could, tell you off. You
Punch you in the throat. Something.
Yes. And, some people are very cool emotionally, and some people are very passionate and wet and violent, and so different people are different in different ways. Some people feel the need to yell and throw a pillow on the floor and stomp on it and get some rage out, and other people are just very gently speaking from their chest, from their heart, or from their belly, or from their stopped up throat, speaking gently, but touching in to the feeling. And it works either way, whether you're a big emoter or a gentle one, it'll work either way.
This just feels like such an important conversation right now, because if we get this right, think of what we get to lose that we've been hanging on to. And and that's why I love this title, Unconditional Forgiveness. Now, it doesn't mean that you're going to be a schmuck, but you're really taking care of yourself.
You really are. And it becomes a way of life. That's why it's titled, Forgive Everyone, Everything. It's kind of like everyone, everything, all the time. It becomes kind of a practice, a health practice, a good health habit, a spiritual practice. It's a life skill, like learning how to drive a car safely. It's something we should all learn how to do. And the things that we lose are things like that heavy feeling in your heart, or that pain, literally that pain in your neck, physical pain in your neck that you've been carrying for a while while you've been engaging with a coworker who is a pain in the neck. It's amazing how much manifests in the body, and how you don't realize it's connected until you do the forgiveness and it goes away. I worked with a woman who forgave her ex-husband, who she'd been resenting for 16 years. And the next day, what did she have? Irritable bowel syndrome or colitis, some kind of intestinal chronic thing. She'd had it for 16 years. It cleared up by half the next day, and it cleared up all the way over the next 6 months.
Wow.
And she did not realize that this gut condition she was struggling with was connected to her resentment to her ex, until she let that go and it shifted in her body. And I hear stories like that all the time. People go, my back stopped hurting after I worked with you. I didn't realize that was connected. I thought, that was from lifting, but actually my lower back stopped hurting completely after we did this piece of forgiveness work.
What about for people who have suffered severe traumas, abuse?
Yes. Well, I am no stranger to that experience myself personally, and I have worked with many people who have terrible stories, terrible, awful, I don't even want to tell them to you, stories. And I'm telling you, people are amazing. People are so resilient. Once they're really ready to heal, and move on. And they have someone who's not afraid of the big bad story with them, and they can move through these steps and stages. It completely resolves. It really it blows my mind. So, for instance, I worked with a woman who, when I met her, she was about 27, but when she was 17, she had been sexually assaulted by her minister. And she was like a nice, earnest little God-filled girl who was working in the church, working in the office, and they went on the road trip with him as his secretary, and he raped her, the minister. What? And she had been through many, many rounds of therapy and groups and whatnot, and she just was still in this little bit of hell. Not a little bit. She was in this kind of hell in her head for a decade. And when she came to my workshop, I could feel when she, we'd check in and say, so what are you going to forgive? What are you going to do? What's your story? When she said that, the whole room, which was about 80 people, just extended such compassion to her. You could feel the whole room just glowed with compassion, and then I knew, oh wow, I'm going to work with her. Wow, I think this is what we're going to do here this weekend. And I ended up working with her with the 8 steps, and we ended up having to encourage her in fantasy to murder this man a few times over, and throw his parts to the wind, and had to get a little bit of violence out. But when she came to the last step and emerged, I thought I saw a rose blooming in the room. I saw she just came through it like a rose, and she began expressing such joy and lightness. It's almost like she had gotten stuck at 17, and there she was again, ready for life, ready for good things. So that is just one example of the many bad stories I have been witness to, and the worst ones are in treatment centers. There's like a 96% correlation between physical and sexual trauma and alcohol and drug addiction. There's a huge correlation. So when I work in treatment centers, which I have a lot, I hear the worst stories. And guess what? They heal. When the person is ready. So, they might have taken a long time to get ready, but then when they're ready, it's happening. It's happening in less than 2 hours, and they're free.
So how do you accelerate the process from being wounded to getting ready to actually forgive?
Well, I think it helps if you educate yourself about forgiveness, like you two have been doing, reading the book that I wrote, and hearing some stories of people who went there. What was it like before? What did you have to do to get through this? What do you feel like now? That's why I love teaching the weekend workshop, which I sorely miss. I've taught it for 30 years, and then we had this pandemic, which we've all had to forgive, and couldn't do anything in person. And, this is powerful, intimate work, so I like to do it in person, not necessarily on Zoom. But at any rate, yeah, so what's really helpful about doing it in person in the workshop or seeing it on a video is you get to see a person move from here to there and realize, oh, it's possible. Oh, maybe I could have healing too. Oh, maybe I could feel better too. You need to kind of really see it to believe it sometimes.
Why do you think people don't understand this? I mean, because until I read your book, until I came across you, this is a very different idea of forgiveness, because, I was raised in church. I was raised golden rule, treat everybody like, we hear all these things, but it feels so hard and we feel so disconnected. Whereas you give a solution that is tangible and easy with all the steps. So what's the disconnect on why this seems so far away from everybody to know about it?
Well, I think, unconditional love and forgiveness are the central messages of Christianity and of all the great religions. They're in all of the great religions as major laws of the universe that we need to learn and understand and do. But we haven't had the example of psychology our explorations of the psyche until the last century or so. And so we're just coming into our ability to do it. It's like, I think the people in the past who were told, hey, you got to forgive, love thy neighbor, forgive. And the ones that were able to do it were people that were spiritually well connected and worked hard at being spiritually well connected, because that spiritual connection is what helps to really what do I want to say, digest the pain that's inside your body. You kind of need that spiritual energy to happen. So if you're a person with a strong spiritual life and a steady relationship with God as you understand it, you're going to have an easier time doing it. Mm. So I just think it's just time. It's almost like it's just a truth that's coming into its time, I feel. In fact, in the last 25 years is when it's been studied by science and medicine. And you can talk to many clergy and psychologists and ask them, so did you take a course on forgiveness when you were doing your psychology training? Nary a one took a course on forgiveness during psychology training. Why is that? Well, because in the old days, psychology was trying to be a science and not be the same as religion. And then you have the clergy, and I have trained a lot of clergy people, and that is really lovely because they're so excited, like, oh, there's a way. I know, I've been trying to help my people in my churches do forgiveness, but I didn't know, except for praying really, really, really hard, and then half the time it still doesn't work.
We talk about it being an experience. Forgiveness is an experience, not necessarily the head.
It is an experience. It's an intention. You do want to, like, say, I will do this. But it's actually kind of an energy experience. You actually feel like something very sparkly and light is starting to happen and come into you, and a spiritual energy is coming into you. And this heaviness is dissolving out of you. It's a physical experience. And that's why there's no doubt about it when it happens. Like when I'm done with somebody and I say, okay, how do you feel? They can tell me, they'll say, well, I feel lighter. And I'll say, really? That's great. Where do you feel lighter? Oh, I feel lighter here. And they're pointing to their chest and here. Oh, my head feels lighter. Or they say, I feel lighter all over. I feel like I lost 15 pounds. Because they have shed this stuck energy, this stuck, stagnant, old energy from a story that was not completed.
Yeah. Well, so we talked about the first two steps. Catch us up on
repeat them again so that we do them quickly.
Step 1. I decide I will do this. I will do this. I will forgive you. I will forgive you today, and I will move on with my life. Step 2, here are my feelings about it. Here is my emotional truth. And we have the empty chair out in front of us, and we let it have it. we talk to the empty chair, and we say, you know what? I hate you because blah, 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 blah. And you did this, and I just, oh, I hope I never see you again. You're so stupid. Now you get to speak the language of emotion. You get to throw a lot of F-bombs if you want to. That's what they're for. It's for releasing, do a lot of language. Cry, accuse, judge. You don't have to be fair. You don't have to be reasonable. You don't have to have the facts right. You can just hate that chair for,
I love that part.
Yeah, isn't that good? I know. I hate you. I hate you so much. That's because that's what's in there. You've got a stuck emotion. That's all. So step 2, you're letting it out. At a certain point, you're going to feel like, oh, okay. Now what? You'll feel a shift. Like, oh, I have just yelled and cried enough. Maybe it's taken 10 or 20 minutes. Now what? Now what is step 3? Step 3, I'm going to release that expectation. So how I do that is I shift my demand, my expectation of what should have happened to a preference or a wish. So you're thinking about this person in the first example, and I'll say, well, you really hurt me by lying to me and being dishonest. And I got my feelings out about that. But now I would really prefer that you had always been honest with me. But you weren't. And I release that expectation that you would have been honest with me. And you just take a minute and go inside and just imagine that one little thing you're holding on to just relaxes and goes neutral. And if there's another part, you would go to that next part. And I would really prefer that you that I always knew you could tell the truth, that you were 100% trustworthy, but you're not. And I'm not going to suffer about that. That's your problem. I release this expectation that you are 100% trustworthy. And you go inside and you let that go. And so maybe you're going to release 1 to 6 expectations in a story. You break it down into its parts. It's like flossing your teeth. You know, you have to get into detail. That old thing of like, okay, forgive and forget never worked. You cannot do a blanket forgiveness. Okay, I forgive you. Doesn't work, right? We all know that. No, I need to forgive you for this thing, and I release it. And this thing, and I release that. And this other thing. Because, you know, when you're laying in bed at night ruminating, that's what you're doing. Your mind is going through the details. And your mind wants you to forgive a detail. So there's step 3, forgive in detail. And step 4 is jolly fun, because this is where we get to take this load of stuff we've been carrying around and imagine that we're giving that responsibility back to the person who caused it. And we tell them, I give you full responsibility for your actions, your words and actions. And I have responsibility just for me. And we just draw this line. We imagine our personal healthy ego space around us like a bubble of light. And this person's problems, their wrongs, their sins, their bad karma, however you want to look at it, is all over there with them. It's for them to sort out. And we don't need to carry it any further. So step 4 is great. You really start feeling kind of powerful and good in step 4. And step 5, now we open up to life in a new way. We really like open up our hearts and our minds, and we, symbolize that in our posture, like, okay, I'm opening up. And this is where, whatever spiritual language you like, I open up to you, God, to give me everything I need, or I'm opening up to the universe to bring me everything that I need. However you want to. I'm opening up to my eternal soul to bring me everything I need on my path. But you're really just saying, okay, new day. I'm paying attention to new things now. And then you continue going into that spiritual level with step 6, where we visualize a source of healing light above the head, like a sun. We visualize like a sun about 18 inches over your head. And some people say that this is the place where the soul connects in with the person. People that are into energy work and meridians and chakras and auras, etc., call this the transpersonal chakra above the head. But it doesn't matter if you think that's really true or if you're just willing to visualize it. It's still going to work. It always works. So you're going to visualize this light over your head and visualize bringing this healing light down into your body like a shower, like a nice flow of light and love. And then you bring it into your heart and your feelings. And you bring it in to your mind, and you bring it into your subtle energy system. So you're just imagining you're just cleansing and restoring with spiritual energy your whole being, because you've now just let go of all this stuff. And then when you're ready, you move on to step 7, where we let this light and love flow through us, and then we extend it in blessing to the person that we have just forgiven. Even if they're a terrible, despicable person that we're never going to see again, we're going to send them a little strand of God's love, because for some reason they're here. They get to be here. God thought they could be here, so we will too. I send you this forgiveness. I send you this unconditional love, just the way you are, and I release you to be yourself. And which brings us to the very last step, in which we look and see what is good about this person or situation, or what is good about you in the situation. We see the good. So sometimes, there's a person who just really, you just can't stand them in many ways. And we're free to dislike people. That's okay. We can dislike people. But we don't want to resent them in this closed down way, because that hurts us, right? So we want to see what's good about someone. And here's this guy, and you can't stand him because he's a narcissist and he's all about himself and he's bossy and he's whatever, and you work with him and he's annoying. But okay, well, he looks great in red. Yeah. He's really nice to his dog. Oh, yeah, he's really good to his dog. He's always on time for meetings. And every now and then he's got a really creative idea. Okay, so there's some good things. Fine, let him be a narcissist. Let him be a bossy jerk the rest of the time. You have forgiven him. And so you are now just going to see him being this guy who's nice to his dog and looks good in red and has occasional good ideas. And you're not going to expect him to be your friend, or your favorite coworker.
What if you go through these 8 steps and you feel wonderful, and then the person does the same damn thing all over again?
Well, you can just about count on that, can't you? Because people are so like what they are.
I really like this woman, don't you, Michelle?
Well, a couple things happen, I found. One is, yes, the next time the person does this thing, you feel briefly annoyed, but you don't have this whole backlog of the 25 other times that they did it because you already forgave that. So you have that one day's bit of annoyance, and then you can just, on the way home in your car, forgive that one day's bit of annoyance, and you're clear again. And then the next time they do it, you start to get mad, and then you realize, oh no, wait a minute, this is what they do. That's right. Okay. And you don't go there. You just instantly cancel the expectation and you work around it. You do whatever workaround you got to do for your two personalities to get through that moment. And then the next time they do it, you're probably going to laugh. You're probably going to go, right, because that's what they do.
Well, I love the fact that you're reminding us that this isn't a one time and you're done. Wipe your hands. This is a daily practice.
Well, for some, yeah. But sometimes people have really interesting experiences where they forgave their sister for this annoying thing, and then she stopped doing it. We don't know why. She like some kind of shift happens in the dance of the relationship. Sometimes, if just one person does forgiveness, sometimes it just makes a remarkable clearing up that you can't really predict that it's going to do that. But we got to do it anyway because it's good for us. It's good for us to do it.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of the times I've had to forgive in my life, and that I'm really good at it when people do really, really bad things to me. And it's the ones, the hurtful, the little niggling things that stick with me.
Yeah, the little thoughtless, insensitive things that somebody you thought knew better.
Hurtful betrayals, as opposed to, and I'm trying to not slam people that have been in my orbit, but there have been some things in the past that other people say, I could never forgive that, and it never occurred to me not to. But I love this idea because it's and with the book is that we're always evolving into better versions of ourselves. And I really think this whole concept makes us much better as we evolve and grow. And I think you did such a good job of putting it together and laying it out. And again, I want to tell people, it's called Unconditional Forgiveness, and by Mary Hayes Greico. And it's, gosh, Michelle, isn't this just...
Yes. Yeah, and I'll say this just again to promote it again. But one of the things that, to build on what Fawn was saying, is I love the fact that you walk detailed through exercises through each of those steps. So as I mentioned before, I literally was going through thinking about something through your book, and it was guiding me through the entire process. And I just think that's a great gift that you're going to give the readers instead of the concepts and we're left to figure it out on our own. I just thought that was wonderful.
I am so happy to hear this, ladies, because I really wanted it to be user friendly. Like I really wanted somebody that I don't know who's in Texas can pick up my book on Saturday morning and close the door and turn off her phone for 45 minutes and feel better, and I get letters and emails from people saying, I tried it and it worked. Thank you so much. So I put my heart and soul into that book. It took me 5 years to write it. And, it had 25 years of experience in it from all these workshops and all these places and all these individuals and all myself, my own sorry stories, which were many. And so I just really felt called to make the best book I could make, and I'm so happy that you are appreciating it.
I wanted to know, for you, the forgiveness expert, what is the hardest thing for you to forgive, and which gave you the biggest revelation of how to get through something? And I'm very sorry that it made it sound like I was being absolutely nosy, which I am in most cases, but I wasn't at that moment.
Well, that's okay. I'm in the forgiveness business. I forgive you. No, and I ask myself too about like how big or bad of my stories should I share, in public? Because is it gonna like trigger people or make them see me differently or something like that? So I don't know. You can think about it and get your editor to snip it if you don't like it.
Well, is there something that's harder for you in the forgiveness thing, or is it that you've got it down so pat now that just...
Well, it's hard for me right now, this minute, this week, that there is a war somewhere, and that I'm seeing pictures on the news of mothers holding the hands of their 8-year-olds, fleeing their city and their homes being damaged. For what? It's really hard for me to see people lose their homes and be homeless, and to see cruelty, to see human cruelty. That still troubles me a lot. It's like, how can anyone anywhere justify being cruel to another person? It still baffles me. And people are so baffling
on that. So this actually would be a coping strategy for things other than personal offense, that we could use this, because people are dealing with so much crisis out there and it doesn't stop.
Well, I know, Mary, that all of us, we're carrying baggage from the past that is keeping us from living fully in this joy-filled life. And I encourage everybody to pick up this book, Unconditional Forgiveness, as well as check out the website, because it's just such a lovely gift that you've given us. So thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And it's forgivenesstraining.com, correct?
Forgivenesstraining.com. Lots of information there, and the 8 steps are there. You can print them out.
Absolutely. Well, this has been wonderful, Mary. It's great to meet you. I want you to help me to work on forgiveness, because tomorrow Michelle's leaving on a trip to Hawaii, which she got from her job,
and she picked somebody else.
Someone else to go. I'm working on it. I'm looking at that chair, and I'm not happy.
I believe in you, Fawn. I believe in you. I think you can do this.
That chair, Michelle, but we wish you a great trip. And really, Mary, thank you so much for joining us here on the podcast.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you for joining the Hard-Won Wisdom Podcast with best-selling author Fawn Germer and corporate innovator Michelle Brigman. Join us weekly for career and life-changing conversations with some of today's most influential thought leaders, senior executives, and trailblazers who will share their mentoring wisdom. This podcast is brought to you by the Women's Leadership Network. Visit hardwonwisdom.com for more on this podcast and for links to Fawn and Michelle's web pages and social media. Also, be sure to rate, subscribe, and review wherever you listen to your podcasts. We really appreciate that effort, and we'll see you next week.